Welcome to How It's Restored. My name is David Cooper. We're going to talk about the last components that we had to restore of this 1938 Peugeot 402 Dalma competition roadster. So we've covered in the last discussions the body, the restoration of the body, the engine, the mechanicals, the chassis, and we'd like to get into talking about some of the last items in the interior that you can appreciate from the standpoint of being a driver. Seats have been done in an earlier restoration, and they were in black leather. They were made of blocks of foam. They were fairly slab-sided and didn't match what the car had when Dorothy Patton raced it. So we took pictures of the car that we had showing the seat configuration, how it fit the car, and we reshaped the seats structure with new leather that we had specially made, specially tanned, specially dyed to the correct blue color, and we remade the seats and reshaped them so they had a little more shape and a more of a look of what she had as much as we could. I think Dorothy had an idea what she wanted with the colors of the car, what she wanted with the seats. She wanted to be distinctive. She wanted it to be hers. And I think a lot of owners feel that they have to do something to make the car theirs and specifically. But blue leather was not uncommon, and blue surface dyed leather was the way leather was dyed at the time. They didn't do a vat dye leather like we would. The leather was glossier then. That's typical of what was done. That's what we did on this seat. And this is common. So I don't think this was unusual even then. What was unusual was just that she had it all. She chose to have it all redone after it had just been done by Portu for the initial installation. She decided she didn't like what they had done and had it all changed. Well, this is a good question. Dorothy Patton and her husband, Rainer Dorndorf, raced this car together, alternately, I guess I should say. And so she was shorter, he was a little taller, so she had a seat cushion made to push her forward a little bit in the seat so she could reach the pedals and steering wheel better. He would take that out and race the car in a more normal seat position. So I think that really was something that was done, and we have photographs of her with the car with the seat cushion behind her back. And we're really fortunate to have so many historic pictures. I mean, in most cases, it's really not common to get hundreds of pictures of a historic car. So it's really wonderful to have all this detail that we can draw on in different ways and use for the restoration. When the car first came in, it had a shifting problem. And we started to look at the shifting problem and think about what was wrong with the shifting. It didn't go into third gear, and I was going to rebuild the sector shifter that had been mounted to the steering column. Essentially what had happened was that in Peugeot Dalma Roadsters, there's a shifter that was commonly mounted right in the center of the dash. And it was an arc style shifter, so you're moving a lever in an arc form, and it goes neutral 1, 2, 3, 4, and you'd move it between those positions. It wasn't the best for racing. It was commonly used, and it was in the middle of the dash. But if you have a right-hand drive car, you can't move that lever. It's right in the way of your steering wheel and your driving. So something had to be changed to make the car work on right-hand drive. And what came in when the car came in, the person who had worked on it before had taken the center shift lever and mounted it to the steering column so that you could, with your right hand, shift that same lever on the side of the steering column. And as it was an old mechanism and it wasn't working very well, the third gear contact was bad, so it went for 1, 2, blank 4. But it did go into the other gears. However, it was awkward to use, and I think it wasn't really the way she raced it from what she said. And then when we stripped the dashboard to refinish the dash back to the color that she had requested, and I'll get into that in a moment, we found that there was traces of a hole on the right side where a small Kotal shifter of a different type had been fitted. And what this was a miniature little H-pattern shifter mounted on the dashboard that you could actually work with your knuckles right off the steering wheel or with your hand. And it was very convenient for right-hand drive. So that's the shifter that she had. Now, I don't know, we only found traces of it. We're basing that on the fact that the shifter mechanism fit inside that hole. So I think we're on sound ground that that was there. I don't have a picture of the dashboard when she was racing. But knowing that this fit was the right piece, we got a shifter of that type. I'd seen them before in France. We obtained the correct shifter of that type, and it needed to be completely rebuilt. So we rebuilt it, re-chromed it, fitted it back to the dash, and it's great. It's just great where it fits, and it works beautifully. And then we repainted the dashboard in a silver that was more in accord with the color that we believe she chose, and it has a hint of the same blue that's mixed into the silver, so it really matches the color of the car much better. Well, first of all, you have to go through every switch. And you know, one of the jobs with the switches are either making a good contact or not. The switch has to be made to be like it was when it was new, essentially, because once it's good, they're good for many years. These are not switches designed for planned obsolescence. These are switches designed to last a long time. So properly restored, you know, if they need new contacts or they need new springs, they need new housings or new screws, new anything, we have to do that to make them good. And that's we do. We fabricate new pieces. Same thing with the control cables for the choke and for the starter. The starter is a pull cable. That pull cable was worn out. We made a brand new one, and I fitted the old pull knob to the new cable so you can't see the difference, but it does work reliably. I think it's almost identical to what it was. You know, what we're trying to do is make the car function the way it was supposed to when it was new. One thing, you know, we were trying to make these little, there's two little switches on the side of the dashboard, and one of them controls, is a toggle switch that controls which of the two side lights go on when you turn the lights on, and the other one is a switch for the panel lights. Do you have dashboard instrument lights? Do you not? When you turn the headlights on, you can turn the panel lights off independently. That was sort of common thing at the time. So we have that. We have an ignition switch, power, you know, the ignition on-off, which is really your on-off switch. And those are the only switches on the car. It's really very simple electrical. We tested the windshield before my client bought it at auction, and the windshield came up to its limit, didn't have a limit stop, popped out of its track, got crooked, didn't sit in the car properly, wouldn't go down again. We had to fiddle around with it quite a bit to try to get it lined up sufficiently to even get the windshield to go down. And once we did that, the auction company were like, don't touch this anymore, which we didn't. But I knew we were going to have to fix it at some point. And then there's a window crank sort of style that is underneath the dash, which allows you to raise and lower the windshield to the correct height. And that windshield crank has a typical French mechanism where there's a gear drive system inside. There's a little gear mechanism inside attached to the crank that rotates the shaft that lifts, and it's essentially a rack and pinion system. It's rotating a shaft with a gear on either side, and that gear rolls up the window and rolls down the window. There are a lot of choices in the restoration process of things you have to know in order to do something that functions properly today.